Hi, my name is Aaron Shelley. I'm currently writing a book called The Working Title of Optimizing Family, and I just wanted to share some of the ideas from that. To start off, I have an MBA and an engineering degree, so when I started looking to families, a lot of the ideas came across or seemed very similar. So, if we start with looking at a business. If we look at a business, they have what I call three classes of resources. Sometimes people refer to them as assets. The first type of resource is called financial resources. These resources are things like money, stocks, other liquid assets. They also have a group of things called tools. Those resources would be cars, computers, video machines, microphones, those type of things. And then they have a last class called real estate, buildings, land, those type of things, real property. So that class of resource, financial, the next class of resource that they have is called social. Social assets are one-on-one relationships. Businesses may have a relationship with other businesses, and then all the individuals in the company have relationships with other people in the business. So those relationships that they have, those can be very useful. Then they have group relationships. For instance, they could be part of a security group, they could be part of a grocery group, they could be part of a lot of those different group systems. And then the last one you have is your reputation. In some cases, you could talk about that as your brand. That would be your reputation. You have a brand for quality products. You have a reputation for those type of things. You have a reputation for screwing companies over. So some of that could be considered just generally people who haven't met you. What is your reputation there? And then the third class that a business will have is what they call human resources. This is a collection of all of the abilities in a company. So if you hire someone who knows how to do marketing and another person who knows how to do sales, so it would be all of those people and their collective abilities would be what they had. If you look at the other human resource you have is the health. If people are healthy, they can obviously work harder than if they're sick. And finally, the last resource that you have is their time. If you have one employee, you only have, or one person in the company, you only have, 40 hours or whatever they're putting in. If you have 100, then you could have 4,000 hours a week. So you kind of see that the scaling of that resource is really dependent on how many people you have. So when we look at, this is the resources that each company has and the types they have. However, if you look at a business, it has what most people refer to the business world as a business model. This is kind of the brains of what decides how do you use these resources. And if you look at the factors that include that, there's the strategy, right? That's what type of products are we going to make, who are we going to serve, how do we think we're going to do that. If you're a startup company, they have a theory about what their strategy is going to be, but quite often it changes. If you look at someone like Walmart, they have a very clear strategy of providing low price things to their customers. Then they'll have structure in a company. It's another aspect of the business model. The structure would be what meetings you have, who does what. Is it a traditional cascading CEO, and then you have the C-level, the chief financial officer, those things, the classic kind of pyramid thing? Or is it more of a hybrid? There's some companies that have no bosses. Is it just a partnership with two people? Those are the things that would involve a structure. And then if you look at the last resource, or the last part of the business model, actually that's that's the culture. So the culture is not referring to the countries. The culture is what are the expectations of people in that company? Are people expected to come into work at a specific time? check in, have their lunch, or are people more free to have creativity? If you look at companies like Walmart, they need people, they're driving or coming at specific times to stock the shelves so people can get it. They need people at registers. Those type of things, kind of a stricter culture on terms of time. If you look at a company like Google, they actually allow their employees a lot of flexibility because they're of who they hire. So that is, and Google's more in the business of creativity. So if you look at this business model, what happens is this business model will take these three resources and it will take them as an input, right? So it looks at, well, what financial resources do I have? What social resources do I have? What human resources do I have? Based on that, then the business model will help make a decision, right? If your strategy is like Walmart, you need to buy more stores. So what they may do is they will take an action here that matches their business model. So the action may be that they are going to they're going to take some of their money, and their business model says, take your money. The action we want you to do is go buy real estate. So that action, if they're successful in buying the real estate, that's the result. Let's say they were unsuccessful, so they just wasted the time, then that would result in a big loss, right? They lose their money. And then they may say, well, based on our attempt there, we're going to also feed back into our system. We're going to try to adjust our strategy. Maybe we're not going to try to buy the same real estate, or maybe we're not going to buy real estate, we're going to go a different way. On the other hand, if they were successful, then they would have what you would call some type of profit. Meaning they went and got the real estate, and then it came back as an asset. So they traded their money, a little bit of their time to buy this piece of real estate. And if you look at companies, quite often we want to spend our money and our time and our abilities to do some marketing because we want to grow our brand. So we're going to do some marketing actions. And the result could be we grow our brand, our reputation goes up. Or we may hire more people, again, taking out the money and time, and we're using our reputation there as well to try to go encourage people to come to our store, to recruit people to our company. The result would be, hey, did we get someone? Great, now we have more abilities that we can rely on, as well as more time because we've hired them. So now if we start to put this is a standard, every company pretty much has this. This is a flywheel effect, if you know that. The more successful you do in terms of profits, right, this is making your assets go up. So the more successful you are at using your time and generating these resources for your strategy, the more assets that you're going to have. And the more losses that you get, the fewer resources, and potentially if a company does that, they will go out of business, right? If they run out of resources, they'll just go out of business and say, we're going to stop functioning as a business. So this looks pretty simple. Most people in the business world would agree. Now, if we take this and we overlay the family on top of this, or even an individual, I'll use family and individual kind of interchangeably, but you see families actually are very similar. They have a group of financial resources. Some people have very little or none to start out. No money, they may not have any tools or cars or anything. They may not own any real estate, but they could. Most people start out with at least a social asset, being that relationship you have with your parents or being part of the family. Those are some very, very small ones. Or even if you were an orphan raised in an orphanage, you would still have that relationship with the orphan in the orphanage. And then you have a reputation. Your family could, but then over time you as an individual develop it. And then if you look at the human assets, everyone has time. We all have the same amount of time, depending on what we do with how our health is. If we were sick, had some problem, that could be cause us to not have as much ability, or our time may be much less where we can actually utilize it for certain things. So health can be good to maintain, and this health includes mental health, physical health, spiritual health, all those type of things. And then abilities are, what do you know how to do? Most people know how to speak a native language at minimum. Some people learn additional languages. There's all those type of things, but most people start out with at least some group of these. And then this is where most companies have a little bit of benefit over people. Most people don't have a very clear strategy, what they're trying to actually achieve in life. Most people, their strategy is like, I want to make a lot of money, I want to be famous. So sometimes you can have some problems there where your strategy is just not clear. But if your strategy, some people have a clear strategy. I'm a technologist, so I need to learn quickly, and my structure is going to be here's my schedule. Every day I'm going to read new literature and try to stay on top of things. And my culture is I treat everyone very well because I know I'm in kind of a white collar environment where there's a lot of flux, and if I burn people or treat people poorly, then I'll have problems. There's also aspects of culture, such things as delayed gratification. Am I willing to invest, today for something that I won't see any return on for 4 or 5 years? If you look in our society, a lot of people who have a strategy of, I want to be a doctor, they have to have a lot of delayed gratification in their culture or in that value. Otherwise they won't make it, because becoming a doctor is 4 years for school, then another 3 years in medical school, or 4 years for initial college, 3 years for medical school, then usually 2 years for residency. So, you're in there 9 years minimum. If you specialize, it's another 3. So, 12 years if you're a specialist, plus the 12 years you got through just to get into 12 or 13 through your primary school. So you're like 20, 30 years of education. So if you look at a family, there's a lot of these similar things that'll happen. And then, what actions are we going to take? You could look at actions that people take, like, I'm going to watch Netflix alone. All right, well, there's your action. Maybe you need it for your health, but more than likely it's just kind of going to be a waste of time. Maybe it's benefiting there, so maybe a little time for health, but most of the time not really resulting in much, so you'd probably have a loss. So, or I want to go, spend money on alcohol or some drugs or different things. You can run up. I had a friend who spent $800 a month on alcohol, and he wasn't in a very high-end job either. So he was spending his money and his time, and it was mostly a loss that was actually hurting his health. So kind of see how that works. In the next video, we'll talk about some of the common strategies of creating financial resources, social resources, and human resources. Thank you.